Of our top stories, and this weekend thousands of people will be rallying calling for greater action to violence against women. The New South Wales Premier will convene a cabinet meeting with experts on domestic violence as calls grow for a royal commission after the alleged murder of a woman in the state's Central West this week. Joining me live is criminal justice and criminology expert Dr Terry Goldsworthy. Thank you so much for your time. Dr Goldsworthy, we're hearing many politicians, including the PM, saying that we all need to step up and more needs to be done. Would you agree?
Yeah, look, DV is a blight on our society. It has been for many years, and we're now all well and truly aware of it. I can remember as a young constable in 1989 when the DV legislation first came into Queensland. It was a new tool for us to deal with relationships that had broken down and involved criminal behaviour, and it's developed a lot, much more expansive since those early days. But look, I've heard the commentary around, DV crisis and other descriptions of it like that. And I would just caution politicians to go to the data and have a look at the data from the Australian Institute of Criminology, which shows that we're actually doing a reasonable job in addressing the DV issue. I mean, the rate of intimate partner femicide has dropped by 78% since 1990. So it's dramatically decreased and continues to decrease. So the long-term data says that we're being quite effective in reality in dealing with domestic violence type crimes. If you look at domestic violence homicides, the last report told us that 68% of the offenders were male and 32% were female. But when you come to victims in domestic violence homicide, it's much more balanced. It's about 45% male and 55% female. So there's a lot of permutations and a lot of nuance around domestic violence homicides, which is what we're focusing on the debate at the moment. But I think we just need to step back and have a look at what does the long-term data tell us. The recent events have been horrific, and there appears to have been some issues that could have prevented these matters occurring. They are all worthy of looking at. But I think in terms of some of the commentary from senior leaders, etc., they should just take a step back and have a look at our long-term data that indicates we are being quite effective in addressing DV.
On our screen it says Bosca, 48% domestic violence homicide victims were male.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so I just gave you the AIC data, which is national, but the Bureau of Crime Research and Stats New South Wales reflects that as well, and that's over a 5-year trend. So, the role of gender in approaching DV does have a role, but there have been some recent studies. One came out last year and said we should be very careful in terms of, looking through DV through a prism of gender as our total response. We should be looking at a multitude of different inputs and factors in relation to DV to decide our legislative and our policy responses. I saw a tweet on Twitter come out from a national editor when Chris Minns was talking about changing the status quo in relation to bail. And the person said, this means that probably men won't get bail if they commit DV offences. Well, I don't think the legislation will gender it. I think the legislation, if they do that, will say if you commit a DV offence. And that could capture a lot of female DV perpetrators, as the Bosca data shows. About 6,000 women every year get charged in relation to a DV-related assault as a perpetrator. So we want to be careful there's not unintended consequences when we come forward with propositions to address these issues. We need to think about it, we need to think of the impact, and we need to think, does this actually address the problem that caused the issue in the first place? And we're seeing a spike in domestic violence homicides at the moment. I'd say it's a spike. It's only a matter of months that we're looking at this data. We need to see what plays out over the next 12 months and see if this is an uptick. If it is, then perhaps we can go further in terms of looking how we respond to this nationally. But at the moment, I would say the long-term data indicates to us that we have got effective policies and procedures in place. Yes, there are ways we can do better when we have issues around bail being allowed and things like that. But we need to judge each instance on its own circumstances. I think that's the important thing.
All right, let's turn to a different topic, and we're reporting today 5 teenagers that have been charged with terrorism-related offences, and it's alleged that the group is associated with the 16-year-old accused of stabbing Christian Bishop Ma Murray Emanuel. It is believed that the teens did communicate via encrypted apps. Some allegedly engaged with extremist content, which included Islamic State videos. What do you think needs to be done in this space?
Yeah, look, I mean, the problem is young people now spend so much of their time on the internet, and we know the internet is being used by terrorist groups as a recruiting ground, and it's quite fertile for them. That's been highlighted now for a number of years that we've seen this as a problematic area. It is difficult. I mean, parents need to be aware of what their children are doing. I mean, we have a lot of focus in terms of child sexual exploitation material and, sexual offenders or predators online. But I think there needs to be some kind of, exposure or focus on radicalisation of young people online as well. And, particularly making sure that young people aren't seeing this as some kind of path to go down and moving into those subcultures that are fomenting, expression of freedom of expression, political movements, and then moving along that continuum to extremist violence. That's where we need to be very careful to make sure that we identify the early warning signs where people may become withdrawn from their normal friendship groups, starting to engage in criminal behaviour, starting to talk about rhetoric that is bordering on extremist, etc., and looking at where are those young people getting that information from, and are they being radicalised online to go then and go and do physical harm in our society. I think it's an issue that's going to get bigger and bigger, and certainly I think the security agencies would be aware of that and doing what they can to try and address it.
And we just heard the announcement just a short time ago about the federal government committing more than $160 million to establish a nationwide firearms register in the May budget. What do you make of that comment?
Well, I think that's an excellent outcome. That's on the back of the William shootings that occurred where 2 police were killed and another injured and a civilian killed as well. So, look, I think that's well overdue. We have a national database for domestic violence orders. I think it's eminently sensible that we have a national database for firearm registered firearms, so that when police turn up to an address, as we heard the Attorney General say, they are fully informed as to the potential threats that face them. That was one of the issues in terms of those shootings. Were the officers aware that there were potential firearms at the address? These are the things that are deadly to police. I mean, knives are the most common weapon in homicides, but you can deal more easily with the knife if you're a police officer, compared to turning up an address and not knowing that there's a firearm in the house that could be ready and waiting for you, and you're much more susceptible to injury from those type of things. So I think it's a good outcome. How long they take to get it in place, I hope not long, and then police will have an extra tool to ensure their safety, which is always a good outcome.
And finally, we're at the halfway mark of Operation Whiskey Legion, where 94 adults, 15 juvenile offenders were arrested, and a number of roadside breath tests and drug tests. How important are these operations?
Look, I mean, these operations are useful. Their long-term effect, I have some concerns about. They're a short-term fix in reality. They're a saturation policing type operation. Now, the government up here is under incredible pressure in relation to crime and being seen to do something about crime. We just had a new commissioner of the police appointed this week. And these operations will go on for, I guess, a couple of weeks. We've already got other operations, Task Force Operation Unison that's been running for 12 months, unlimited overtime in reality for police. The problem is we have less police on the ground. The crime report came out, the official Queensland crime report came out this week and told us what we all knew, that there's been an 11% increase in the crime rate in Queensland, and that we're at a 20-year high for crime. So, they'll make a dent, but, those resources that are down on the Gold Coast for Whiskey Legion will have to go back to where they come from, their original positions. So really the status quo will return. So there has to be some more long-term strategy put in place by the new commissioner, and I think we need to hear what his strategy is sooner than later.
Dr Terry Goldsworthy, thank you as always for your time and expertise.
Thanks, Janie.
Nearly